The Satlander is completely rebuilt now, so let's take a look at it. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. The Tacoma build, or I should say rebuild, is now complete. If you caught the last two videos, you will know that I sort of ripped the whole truck apart. I took a lot of stuff off. I'm making a lot of changes to it, and a lot of the major changes have now been completed. So to recap the first two videos, if you haven't watched them yet, basically I wanted to change up the bed, so the Diamondback cover, the tent, the rack that's on there, and that stuff is still underway. And then when it comes to everything else on the truck, I wanted to make the whole thing a little bit more uniform because I was running prototype parts from a bunch of different companies and then some regular in-production parts. So the two things that I was focusing on were the armor and the lighting. So to make the truck completely uniform as it sits now, I had the opportunity to work with two very cool companies. These are companies that I've respected for a long time. I'm fairly familiar with their products, and now I'm super familiar with their products because we just put a bunch of them on here. So I'm happy to announce that I'm now a part of Team C4 Fabrication as well as Diode Dynamics. So for the past like 2.5 days, I spent a bunch of time up there at C4 Fabrication where we installed all new bumpers and armor from front to rear, and it was a hell of a good time. I was up there in Sturgis, South Dakota, really to film, but also I like lending a hand. I like wrenching on my own vehicles from time to time. I got some cool install shots to show you guys throughout this video. Before we get into the walk around of the truck, I want to explain a little bit about C4 if you're not familiar. One of the things that drew me to C4 initially is that all of their products are bomb-proof. Everything that I have on the truck now, the front bumper, the skids, the sliders, the rear bumper, and all the accessories that are mounted to it are all hand produced. They're all welded by hand at C4. So when we had the chance to go and sort of get a little bit of a tour of their facility, it was super impressive. Much like when I visit other companies who I tend to work with, I have such a higher respect for these products now that I've met their whole team. I've met the people who have welded all of these parts together, and to see things go from just static sheets of steel into these awesome products that we enjoy having on our trucks, it just makes me really appreciate it all. So these products are super high quality, all handmade in Sturgis, South Dakota. And when it comes to the lights, Diode Dynamics, I was running a few different lights before, and you guys may have seen the install of the 42-inch light bar on my roof. My initial impressions of just running that light bar up there really sold me on Diode Dynamics. They make super high quality products. They're priced competitively with a lot of other stuff out there. So while we were installing the new bumpers, we also switched out all the lights, and now I am running full C4 Fabrication armor and all Diode Dynamic lights. So that's enough talking. Let's take a look at how the truck sits now. So starting off right up front here, we're greeted with this awesome, really unique looking front bumper. This is the C4 Overlander for Gen 3 Tacomas. All of this stuff is available now, and sort of like a new product release as well. So what's sort of unique about this bumper is that I opted for a version with no bull bar. There are a few different bull bar options. There's also a hybrid bumper version. I personally like the Overland because it's full sheet metal all the way across instead of using all those little tubes. The options for the bull bars can be found on their website as well. Most people who do run the Overland like having a bull bar. I personally like the super clean look without it. You'll have to excuse me because we just drove quite a lot from South Dakota and there's bugs and dirt smashed all over this thing, but you guys get the picture. So the Overland is of course a high clearance bumper. If we take a look underneath here, you can see under here that I opted for the frame supports as well. Now the bumper as it sits can mount up to the stock factory points, but if you're putting a winch in there and you plan on pulling anything heavy with it, it's a good idea to have these secondary brackets here. This gives you a little more extra reinforcement instead of just putting all the load right on the front of the bumper here. So if you're having a winch on your truck, these are a really good idea to add. You will notice with support brackets like this and on the sliders and the rear bumper, C4 uses stock mounting points, but also in a lot of cases adds more mounting points, which just makes their bumpers and all of their armor extremely bomb-proof, rigid. I haven't gone off-road with the truck a whole lot yet, basically just to where we're at right now, but I already feel pretty confident that I can take this truck over almost anything without damaging too much. So under here you can also see how we sort of relocated the Fox 2.5 DSC reservoirs. Still have great access to the clicker. This fitment is very tight because the bracket to hold that is actually mounted back there, but we made it all work. So if you have a setup similar to this, this will essentially be how it looks. Now coming around to the very front, one thing that we did end up changing out was the winch, kind of, sorta. So this is the same winch that I've had on the truck. This is the Warn VR Evo 10S with the synthetic line. Now because this bumper has such a high clearance on there, the control module that sits on top of the winch would sort of bump into the frame that sits behind the grill right here. So instead of modifying that and like cutting things that we really don't want to cut, what the guys at C4 did was relocate that module. And now if you take a peek inside of the left winch access hole here, you'll notice that the control module is sitting over here on this side. And this winch is wireless, so I can use it without actually plugging the controller in. But now you can see I can plug in a cable right there and run the winch like normal. If we took out the bracket, I could still reach up here. I can reach the little free spool lever. That way I can pull the winch line out, and I could probably plug it in there. But again, we didn't want to cut a whole lot, so we just moved the module over here. I don't know of a whole lot of people that have done it this way, but I really dig it. So also on the front here, we of course have some really heavy duty recovery points. I'm running the Warn Epic shackles on there. That's something that I may switch out in the future, like the Epic hook and the Fair lead, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And now for the lighting, which are all covered in bugs right now. On both the left and right side of the truck, I went with the Diode Dynamics Stage Series 3-inch. Now these are SAE fogs, and I have them wired into the actual factory fog light switch, so if I just turn the little stalk over where all my lighting control is, then those things will come on. The fitment in this Overland bumper is damn near perfect, and we used the stock mounts that came from Diode Dynamics for those. And now for the big bumper light bar in the middle, this happens to sort of match the 42-inch light bar on the roof, and this is the Stage Series 30-inch light bar. I went with white on these lights for now because I'm waiting until I can get some sort of amber. I don't know if I want to change out different lenses, if I just want the fogs to be amber, or if I want this whole bar to be amber, or sections of it. I haven't really decided yet, so we're just going with white for now. This is a spot and flood combo, and I haven't driven with this thing on at night yet. However, if it compares to the 42-inch on the roof at all, this thing is going to be insanely bright. Now, if we take a really close-up look at the fitment on here, the fitment on this thing is almost perfection. Like, it really can't get any more well fit than how this light sits in the bumper. And the reason for that is because C4 is, of course, a fabrication shop. The stock mounts that came with this light bar didn't quite fit the contact points on this bumper like perfectly. We probably could have got them to work. However, the guys at C4 ended up laser cutting a custom bracket specific for this light and this bumper on my truck. So super cool personalized touch to this. They cut it out with their big laser, they bent it to spec, and it ended up with this super awesome clean result right up there and flush to the bumper. You got the C4 logo up front, and I am super happy with this look. Now, slowly working our way back the truck, we're moving on to the skids, and this is something that's obviously a little bit difficult to show, but I did grab some footage while we were at C4. These skids are also sort of a new product for Gen 3 Tacomas, so anyone out there who has a 2016 and up, these are for your truck. These skids tie in perfectly to the front bumper, and they are all steel, which means you're not going to have to worry about thrashing them up too much. I believe it's about a 3/16 inch steel plate, and right now I currently have the engine skid, the transmission skid, and the transfer case skid. We even took it a step further this time and added a differential skid as well. Now, because I already had the truck pulled completely apart while I went up there, the install of this took maybe 15 minutes. They are a little bit heavier than an aluminum counterpart. However, with just two people, you could hold it up in place while one person ran the screws, and turned out really sick. I'm hoping I don't bash those up too soon, but I will report back as soon as I get some trail rash on there and let you guys know how they actually held up. Now, when it comes to the skids and the sliders, they also sort of mesh up into one of those extra mounting points that I talked about that C4 does. So they already have bomb-proof products, but the way they actually mount them up to these vehicles make them extremely rugged and durable. So for the sliders on here, you do have a few different options. I opted for sort of like the spec'd out kind of version. So we do have top plates on here with a little bit of a kick out in the rear. Now, if we get down kind of low here, you can see just how high these sliders sit out. It's basically, I believe, a 25-degree angle compared to the 10 or 15 that I had on the truck before. So this definitely gives you a little bit more ground clearance. If you're using a slider as a step, it's going to be up quite a bit higher, but also because it's higher, it makes accessing the roof and other parts of the truck a little bit easier. So coming around to this side, just like I've been mentioning, instead of just using factory mounting points for sliders like this, you could get away with that and it would be okay, but C4 goes the extra step and makes these things incredibly stout. So if you're familiar with the regular mounting points, you can sort of see them across the frame here, but they also add sort of vertical supports going through the frame in a few different places. I believe I ended up drilling and adding 3 more contact points, which are vertical up through the bottom of the frame. So if you can imagine taking a really hard hit on these sliders, I'm talking like dropping 2 foot off of a rock onto another rock and landing on that. If you only have contact points running this way through the frame, then there's still a chance that you could break a bolt or sort of bend up your slider into the side of your truck, causing damage. The whole point in having these is, of course, preventing damage. So with the extra contact points that C4 puts on these, as well as some up in the front where it ties into the skids, these sliders are now rigid enough that I can actually use them as a jack point. So if I have a high lift jack, which I don't currently have on the truck, if I'm out on the trail and I need to replace a wheel, a tire, get underneath it for whatever reason, I can actually use any point of this slider as a jack up point, and that to me is pretty damn crazy. And finally, coming around to probably my favorite part of this whole armor and light setup, this C4 Overland high clearance bumper. The clearance of this bumper is super high. We actually ended up cutting the bed sides just a little bit more. And not that ground clearance was really an issue before, since I am on 35s and I'm not doing anything super gnarly with this truck. It's really just built for overlanding and camping. But the lines on this thing are phenomenal. Again, it is using factory points to actually mount the bumper up with additional points. If you are familiar with how a bumper mounts up to a 3rd gen Tacoma, you will notice that we have yet another addition of a contact point up here, meaning that this bumper absolutely will not move. With that added bolt in there, there is no way this bumper is moving at all. And that is, of course, what you want. That's what you're going for when you're running a vehicle like this. I, of course, have a lot of gear mounted on here. There's a bunch of weight on this swing out, but with the way this bumper is mounted and a few other features down here, this thing is super rugged. Now, while we're back here, let's talk about these accessories. On the left-hand side here, I opted for the Rotopax and MaxTrax mount. You could really put anything you want on here. However, it looks perfect like this. There's a bunch of different mounting points and you can put all sorts of gear on here, but I'm pretty happy with how this turned out right now. So I am still using a regular Rotopax mount with my water jug and a little bit of extra fuel. Just a single set of MaxTrax on here for now. I use these quite a lot though, so I may add another set in the future. It can't hurt. And if you look inside here, you'll notice that we still have some mounting points going up and down. I could actually move this thing up and down on the swing out itself, and it's just completely customizable, which is really nice. Another thing on the swing out that I almost forgot to note because it's sort of hidden back here is the backup camera. So instead of having this thing mounted on my tailgate, it wasn't even mounted on my tailgate before because I had modified it before then, but we relocated that camera to right here and the view looks really great. Now over on the right hand side, I have my full-size 35-inch spare tire. These are the black Rhino Abrams wrapped in Toyo Open Country mud terrains. There's a look at the specs of the tires for anyone who's curious. 35 by 12.5, and those are on a 17-inch wheel. Now a wheel like this and a tire like that, coupled with Rotopax and all this other gear on here, makes this pretty heavy. So let's take a close-up look at this latch over here. What's really cool about this latching mechanism is that I could put a pin in there and sort of lock it in place. It does have spring tension on it, and as I pull this open, you can get a look at how this thing actually locks up. So I'm currently parked with the truck facing downhill, and we're sort of at an uphill angle here, so you would think the swing out would be really heavy. However, they do add a support arm to their swing out, making it super easy to move even with all that weight on there. This thing does articulate into 2 different positions as well, so sort of like a 90 degree like you see right here, and then if you pull up on the T-handle, you can open it up just a little bit further to get a little more access to whatever you have in the bed of the truck. So over on the T-handle side, you have a really nicely welded bracket in here with a double shear point, a gigantic bolt going through, and then a nut on the bottom actually welded on there. So Hopefully this thing is pretty dang solid. It sure feels like it. The T-handle is of course on a spring, so as that articulates around, it can go into either the first or second notch. And then coming back over to the latch side, this, because of the way this sort of like sandwiches itself in here, this is sort of like a double shear point too. If in the future this thing wears in and gets sort of loose, I can just simply replace those plates in there and make this thing super solid again. It sort of ends up being like a custom fit over time, because initially, if you are closing this gate up without any weight on the actual swing out, this latch point is going to come in a little bit high, so you do have to put a little bit of down pressure on it. Even the way mine sits right now, you can see that as this comes in with all the weight on there, it's still a little bit high, and then it forces it down into place, and then the lockup is insanely solid. Now we've got sort of a better look at how this thing locks up with the other side across from the pivot. You can opt for a right-hand swing or a left-hand swing. I, of course, have it mounted with the pivot on the driver's side of the truck. Kind of unconventional. Most people want it with the pivot on the passenger side, but I actually really like it like this. Now you can see these two pucks that we mounted on here, which can actually be removed super easily, and because this thing is sort of like a plastic, maybe Delrin type of material, I'm not exactly sure what that's made out of. So essentially this thing is going to lock up like a folding pocket knife. If this thing wears out over time, or if it needs some adjustment, I can adjust it with those two plates there, and that's something that's going to make products like this last a whole lot longer. Now a few more pieces on the bumper itself. We do have chase lights now from Diode Dynamics. These are the Stage Series SSC2s, so we got sort of like a flood spot combo similar to the front light bar. We do have a plate light wired in right here, and the license plate flips up, which gives you access to your hitch and your hitch connection. Not really sure if I'm going to end up towing anything with the truck since I have the van, but it's nice to have that option. And now for the very final piece of all of this, the thing that I really, really love the most, and it's kind of a simple thing, but you may have seen me talking about it in some previous camping videos with the Tacoma. All of their swing outs come with a table, which is perfect for when you're outside camping. You can throw a Coleman stove on here and cook stuff, have some drinks. It does have a bottle opener built into it because everything that's made out of metal needs a bottle opener on it. So you can pop this thing down when you want to cook or just have a little bit of extra space other than just using a tailgate, and then simply flip it up and then lock it in place when you're ready to drive. Alright guys, so that is it for this rebuild of the Tacoma. Will I do another one of these in the future? I don't know. I'm pretty happy with everything the way that it sits right now, but I'm never going to say never. I just did say never, didn't I? So huge thank you to everyone on the C4 team. I'm glad to be a part of it now. I enjoyed hanging out with you guys, and we got the truck super dialed in. I think we're ready for a road trip now. So for everyone else out there, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns on these parts, I'm going to leave some links in the description down below. We can start a discussion as well. Leave some questions in the comments down there, and I'll try to answer anything as best as possible. If you want to see me put all of this armor and all of this lighting to the test, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because I make new videos every week, and we are about to embark on a 6-week-ish journey in the truck. So stay tuned for all of that. We got a lot of fun stuff coming. That is all for today. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.